Most people don't say, hey, I've got $1 million in the bank, let me go into real estate. They go, I'm broke as a joke, and let me go into real estate with no money.
We want to know about you.
Call me the prodigal son. My parents kicked me out when I was 18 years old. Undergrad was a fraternity blur.
Do you have to go to college to be successful?
Absolutely not.
A huge thing that's spoken about is work-life balance. Does that even work? Is that even true?
You need to ask my wife that on varying days. I started Vision on a $15,000 debt on my credit card. That's all it cost me. I never had to put another dollar into Vision for 10 straight years.
What's your viewpoint on the work-life balance aspect, keeping that importance for your family?
At the end of the day, if everything I do and I end up losing my family or go through a divorce or anything else, everything I've done is worthless. And he said, you know, Roger, if I had one regret, I lost my family out of this deal.
What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a blessed day. And today I am sitting with one of the top commercial real estate brokers in Dallas-Fort Worth. Now, if you drive around here, I'm sure you see the big blue signs, and if you don't see them, you're more than likely not driving around. He is a licensed real estate broker in Texas. He is the founder of Vision Commercial, one of the fastest growing commercial firms in all of Dallas-Fort Worth. He was awarded from CoStar the Power Broker Award the last 4 years. On top of all of that, he took his company from 11 listings to 350 plus listings, which is insane. He is also a certified commercial investment member, CCIM, and he was awarded Fort Worth Business 40 Under 40. That's the man I have sitting with me right here, right now. I welcome you all to Roger Smeltzer. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Good to see you, Crump.
All right. I'm excited, guys. If you're excited, you guys have to hit that like button because we are about to give you some epic stuff. We're going to dive into his life, into his company, into his successes, and most importantly, we're going to let you guys realize what opportunities you guys have and what you can do. Now, before I start, your last name, Smeltzer, reminds me of a pretzel company. Why?
I have no idea.
You don't
I get Alka-Seltzer a lot, but, or Roger Dodger, but not pretzel company.
What do they
That's
say,
a new
Roger
one
Dodger?
for me.
It reminds me of a pretzel company. I'm not sure why. Anyways, for those watching, I want you to sit back, and I'm telling myself this, relax, because you're in for a treat. You're about to get motivated. Things are about to get exciting, and we're diving into, like I shared with you, Roger's life. Now, I'm going to be asking you some questions. You're just going to answer them on how you perceive them and how you like to answer them. And for those of you who are watching, you're going to find out what beast of a company Roger has built. Also, what beast of a person he is. You're going to see how he views commercial real estate, how he invests in commercial real estate, the funny deals, the weird deals, the crazy deals that he's done. You're going to find about all of that. But before we get into that, I'm sure all of you who are watching this video, including myself, we want to know about you, about him. Who is Roger? Family, kids, business, work-life balance, successes, investments, and so forth. So my first question to you, Roger, is take us back years ago. Let's say you're in high school, in college. Who is Roger? How was he? Was he business savvy? Was he always successful? Was he always good at what he did? Who are you?
Oh, wow.
Loaded question, right?
A very loaded question. You go all the way back to college. Definitely a very different person than I am now. Okay. College, I rebelled. You can call me the prodigal son. My parents kicked me out when I was 18 years old. Came back from South America as a foreign exchange student and got in some trouble. And my parents kicked me out my senior year, so I lived on my own my senior year of high school, and then was very blessed to I received 2 full ride scholarships to go to Wichita State for my undergrad. Nice. Like a week after I got kicked out of my parents' house. So
but they kicked you out, but you were doing good.
Well,
how does that work? So you got a scholarship. Was it after they kicked you out you got motivated?
No, I've always been driven.
Nice.
And if I focus on something, I'm going to achieve it. That's just kind of always, whether, you know, I was a Boy Scout geek in high school and did play some sports. Might not look like it now, but anything I did, I was driven towards it, and I pretty much have achieved usually pretty well. Okay. But yeah, my parents kicked me out. Got 2 full ride scholarships to go to college, but college was given to me, if you will, on a scholarship. I didn't I ended up having to go back and get my MBA to really get serious about school.
Wow.
Undergrad was a fraternity blur. I mean, it wasn't. I didn't take college seriously.
Okay.
And regret that. I regretted that for a while, and we've overcome that. So.
That's impressive. So you did go to college. A lot of people who are watching this is just a little bit a curveball, but people wonder, do you have to go to college to be successful? Just a short answer, do you?
Absolutely not.
So it doesn't define anything we can't say it doesn't define some of your successes, but in general, you can still win, you can still do big things without that degree.
I don't think that the degree is as, obviously there's some professional degrees, and
Yeah.
you don't want a medical doctor that learned how to do surgery, on Lamar Avenue here in Arlington. He did it a couple times, did it well, so let's keep doing it. But
Yeah.
from a non-professional standpoint, and then the business world and so on and so forth, I think what college, and even today as we interview people and look at people, watching someone work towards a goal, and college would be that goal. It's a 3 to 5 year goal for somebody, and there's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. There's going to be difficulties and job losses and economy shifts, and probably not COVID for everybody, but shifts. But someone who can focus on a goal for 3 to 5 years and attain it, I think that's indicative of why college is valuable. Not necessarily the pure educational aspect of it, but we see that in our company too, where a lot of our agents that don't have a college degree, some of them struggle to work through the difficult. It's the stamina, if you will, to work through a hard problem and to solve problems, because that's what we do. I mean, that's the nature of what we do, is solve people's problems.
Awesome. Now, married,
Yeah, absolutely.
right?
Yes.
How many kids?
Beautiful wife. Met her on vacation in Mexico, and she moved up here and for a study abroad program here at UTA, and I never let her leave.
Wow. So love at first sight?
I knew after our first date I was going to marry her. And I was on vacation. I went on this date with this girl, and I came back and I told my best friend, and he had some choice cuss words as to how I was wrong, because he thought I was crazy or I had too much tequila. So met her, and we have 4 absolutely incredible and individually different children. I've got 3 boys, 8, 10, and 12, and then I've got a little princess, Abby, who's 5. And
so you got Abby, and the boys' names are 8, 10, and 12?
My oldest is JJ, is Roger the Third.
Nice.
Joshua David, and also Samuel Albert, who's named after his grandfather, his maternal grandfather.
That's awesome. So as you guys hear, Roger is not just someone who started a business, his company, and went headfirst into that. He built a company, but also he has a family. And a huge thing that's spoken about is work-life balance.
Without question.
Does that even work? Is that even true?
I think you need to ask my wife that on
Okay.
varying days. No, work-life balance is difficult, and it's. I think what's changed about it is our parents' generations wasn't about work-life balance. It was about provision, and if you have time with your kids, that's okay. But everything was driven on provision. Now, we live in a different world. My wife does extraordinarily well as an independent distributor for an essential oils company, and we're able to balance incomes, and we're able to. And I took a sabbatical in 2018 where I took a year off work to go down to Mexico and help her father, who was dying of lung cancer, and took our kids out of an expensive private school to go down there and live in Mexico in a foreign country and help him. So it has allotted us the ability to do some very unique things with our kids. We homeschool our kids.
Nice.
Because there's too much drama in the public school system right now,
Yeah.
or in the world in general. And so being home, it's always it's always kind of like a tightrope act, depending on the day. Karam, is what you do as well. These fires come up. Can't predict a fire, and so you deal with them and you move on, and so on and so forth. My kids have. We have a 40-minute drive from my younger son's football practice to home, and they have mastered the art of being quiet when daddy's on the phone.
Nice.
But they also know that means I get to teach them literature and English and other subjects, but I also get to be home with them a tremendous amount more than other people.
So we basically spoke about how you got a family, you're running a successful business, you balance the two very well, But there's a lot of things behind the scenes many do not see on how you had to balance those two very well. I personally know Roger, and I know that you've had to do big decisions, big moves regarding your family, regarding decisions that maybe you had to put money away on the table, where you could have made X amount of money, but you didn't because of your family, because you felt they're more important, because you felt sitting with them that extra hour made more sense to you, maybe not financially, but I guess emotionally with your family. So what's your viewpoint on the work-life balance aspect, trying to be successful, being the best in what you do, but also keeping that importance for your family?
At the end of the day, if everything I do and I end up losing my family or go through a divorce or anything else, everything I've done is worthless. Absolutely worthless.
Wow.
And so at the end of the day, my priority is always going to be my family, always has been my family. But I also don't want to say that it hasn't come at sacrifices, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So early on in my career, there were a lot of late nights that I wasn't there or wasn't around, whether I was at a planning and zoning meeting or whether we were at some kind of a social-ish event with a retailer or whatnot. But I gave up a lot of that early, and I think there's a part of this industry where this industry is kind of a stair-step industry, where you grind for a season, and you don't necessarily get comfortable, but you get established, right? And some of the grinding you did before, you don't have to do as much of it because those relationships are there, and so on and so forth. It did take a toll on my marriage. It took a toll on my family. When kids are little, I don't think they really notice, or you don't think that they notice, if you will, when they're real little. But I'd love to sit here and tell you that I've had, a rosy marriage and home life. No, it's not perfect. It never is. But making sure that my eyes are on the right things and focused on the right things. There are a lot of things that Vision could have done very differently in terms of acquiring other companies and taking on more debt. And thank God I didn't take on too much debt, because COVID was a nightmare for third-party leasing firms. So we've run, at the end of the day, I've made sure to focus on, most important thing is always my family. And we don't run high debt levels. We live way below our means, or well below our means. My car's got 120-some thousand miles on it. My wife's car has 110,000 miles on it.
Wow.
We will drive the wheels off of our vehicles, and you won't ever see me in a Maserati unless it's gifted to me by Karam someday. So,
Nice.
But living below our means, I think, is critical, and that's where people, in specifically in our industry, there's so many people in our industry. Our industry is an up and down, ebb and flow industry. You have a good month and a bad month, and a couple good months and a couple bad months. It's just there's nothing consistent about our industry. It is the craziest industry out there because it's so up and down.
I agree.
And so, at the end of the day, though, if you are, there are so many people in our industry, like survived through the recession back in 2009. We lost probably between 20 and 30% of commercial real estate brokers left the industry altogether.
Wow.
And a lot of those people were attached to deals where they had pre-spent the money they thought they were going to make on a sale, on a ground lease, on a lease, whatever else. And in the world, the bottom fell out on them. Or, I'll give you a good example, and I can think of 10 young kids that are 2 years or less removed from college, and they're driving an Audi, they're driving a new Audi, they're leasing an Audi, and they're working for a big name firm, and they have some money going, and then all of a sudden something tanks. And when the economy gets hard, there's not an expansion, there's a rescission, of people. So I think is probably from my roots is I'm not a big fan of debt unless I'm leveraging a property, which is something tangible I can get return on, but I don't get car loans. I pay cash in my car for my cars, and so on and so forth. So living below my means has allotted us the ability to, this year we bought 5 acres on a home out in Hazlitt, to spend more time with our kids, with a pond where my kids can fish. We've got a 4-wheeler track. We're going to get a go-kart track. I just got a home gym set built, just got one that arrived today, because that's needed. So those decisions to not buy the brand new car, to not, my computer is 4 years old and I keep replacing the hard drive on it, but I like the computer, so why go buy a brand new computer every time? So, I mean, that's just kind of the fabric of who I am, and I think that's reflected well on vision too.
Yeah. One thing that many of you guys are hearing him say is vision. And I didn't say it in the beginning because we're getting into that, which is the business life, how he's built a business, how he's built a company, which the name is Vision Commercial. So when he says vision, that's his baby. That's what he's built. That's what he's invested in. That's what he's, you can say, I guess, curated into what it is today, a very successful company. And one thing that I preach a lot on this channel is for real estate agents is do not spend your commissions before they're actually in your bank account.
Okay.
I've had deals where I was literally signing the papers at the title company to find out that the loan fell through, to find out that the buyers changed their mind, the seller decided they don't want to, and the deal just died. I know agents who spend their 20, 50, 100 grand commissions as if it's there even though it hasn't came in yet, right? And when the pandemic hit in March 2020, roughly, I got a call on Monday, 5 of my biggest deals that I was working, probably worth $3-4 million, every single one of them back to back died. And I just got married, just went on my honeymoon, and I was spending like
Yes.
I was making those commission
And I bet you that
checks.
drove you nuts.
I was looking at my phone, I was like, man, I don't know if that honeymoon was worth
But
it.
but that kept you up at night, right?
It did.
And how many of us, if you're debt laden, if you're living above your means,
Yeah.
if you're spending before you have it, how many sleepless nights does it take for you to realize that that's not healthy? It's not good for your marriage.
Yeah.
It's not good. I mean, that trickles down to your children and your whole life and
It
how you
ruins
treat
a lot.
people.
Yeah, it ruins a lot, 100%. So spending that commission before it comes in, just saying that is valuable. We see agents going out there and buying the nicest cars, the nicest suits, the nicest watches, the nicest whatever you want to name it, only to realize their bank account doesn't reflect really what it is that they're showing or showcasing. So that's a huge thing that
I had an
that you
agent
should-
last year he drives a $120,000 car.
Mm-hmm.
He came and he showed me his it was an MSRP $9,000 watch that he bought for $5,000.
Okay.
I think he made $50,000 last year.
Wow.
And I'm looking at that going, oh my goodness, how is that okay? And
Yeah. Keep in mind, he's a broker who has a ton of agents underneath him that he trains, he writes the checks to. He knows what they're making. So if I came to Roger and I'm driving a Lamborghini Aventador worth $500,000 and he's writing my 1099 checks and I'm making 55 or 60 grand that year, he's over there thinking. He might not say it, but he's over there thinking. So I know what you mean with that. So we're transitioning into Vision Commercial, into the business that you started. How did it start? Where did it start from? I know that you were a real estate agent prior to becoming a broker, prior to opening your company. So kind of share with us the story on how Vision Commercial came to fruition.
okay. I interned at a company called Innovative Developers in Fort Worth.
Okay. Was it a real estate company?
Yes, and they're a spec, or not spec, they're a fee-based developer. So basically, instead of them speculating that they'll fill up a project, a doctor will come and say, hey, I need 2,000 square
Got
feet
it.
over in the medical district, and they'll find the land and everything. The funny story behind that job was I was going into the real estate world, and there was a medical project near my home where I was living at the time in Grapevine, and I talked up the GC who was building the building, and it turns out, after doing some research, the CEO of this company went to Wichita State, which is where I'm from, and it's 7 hours north of here, and there's not many Shockers in this market. So I overnighted him a Shockers hat, and Glenn is at the time was mid-60s. I believe, and Glenn, if you weren't mid-60s then, I'm sorry. Maybe it was late 50s, could have been.
Maybe Glenn's watching.
You tend to embellish the age on one side, but other people are older. And I overnighted him a Shockers hat. And he was floored that anyone knew he went to Wichita State and so on and so forth. And his phone call was, Roger, I appreciate the gift. I've never received a Shockers gift in my entire career. That's so cool.
Wow.
Definitely going to wear the hat. He goes, but I got some bad news. And I said, what's that bad news? He said, I don't have a job for you. I was like, well, at least meet me. At least sit down and talk to me. And he goes, I can do that.
Nice.
And so I sat down with him, and I sat down with Matt Carter, his COO. Matt's a great guy. And I had about a 30-minute session in how to convince them to hire me. And I knew that going in. I knew I didn't have a job, but I wasn't walking
So you
out
were
of there.
still meeting because you wanted to get hired. It wasn't just a chit chat, hello.
Well, I want to get hired, and there were certain things with their company that, they did medical development. I came from a medical background I think we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So I thought I was going to do more medical, and I really wanted to be there. I liked the ethos and the character of their company. And so I begged them, and I told them flat out, I will be your most overeducated intern. You don't have to pay me much, pay me enough for gas money to get here.
Nice.
And they paid me adequately, and I said, I'll do anything. Just ask me and I'll do it. And they paid for my real estate license, which was probably the first best gift of my career, because, and coming in, most people don't say, hey, I've got $1 million in the bank, let me go into real estate.
100%.
They go, I'm broke as a joke, and let me go into real estate with no money. Yeah. And so it would have taken me a while to save up money to get a real estate license. So they paid for my license, and that internship ended at the end of the summer. Went into brokerage, worked for a small firm out of Mid-Cities area called Alliance Commercial.
Okay.
And there were 2 ladies there that mentored me, one of which I ended up choosing to kind of follow her a little bit more. She did a lot more retail and pre-leasing retail, so stuff that hadn't come out of the ground yet, which is really hard to fill up. It's not as easy because it's not tangible. And so I followed Janice. Janice ended up starting her own company called Strategic Commercial a couple years later. And so she was down in Austin at that time, and I ran DFW for her for Strategic. And just over time, I knew that I saw real estate differently than other people.
Okay.
And not in a negative, not looking down or not in a condescending way, but I didn't look, most brokers, most agents for that matter, they look at real estate from a standpoint of greed, and from a self-serving standpoint of what can this client do for me, versus I knew from the core that I got into this industry to help people. Yeah. I knew that if I always was helping people, even if I didn't make money, I knew it would pay back on the dividends on the backside of it. And so we grew, and we grew well with Strategic, but from a resource standpoint, I knew that I needed more resources to be able to grow. And so I started Vision in 2011 with 11 listings. Wow. I felt the whole story behind Vision. I had told my wife that I felt led. I felt that God was telling me to start my company, and so I went kind of back to work for the next couple weeks. I came home and had a disagreement with the lady who was running the company, and she's a fantastic person, and I love her to this day. Yeah. Still a great friend of mine, but we didn't see it complete eye to eye on stuff. And my wife turned to me and said, didn't you tell me you felt like God told you to start this company? And I said, yes, but we don't have the money, And she goes, what are you waiting for? If he said it, do it.
Wow.
And it was one of the most defining moments of my life, because I had debt. I had credit card debt, and I just got done talking about not living below your means. Yeah. Or not living above your means. I started Vision on a $15,000 debt on my credit card. That's all it cost me.
So to start Vision, $15K is what it cost you.
I think $8,000 of it was signs. But I did everything on the cheap, Karan. I did everything on the cheap. My LLC documents, I didn't spend.
$15,000 still expensive. Did you have an office?
No, heavens no. I had a 4th bedroom of our home. Matter of fact, my partner, Barrett, Ricky, all these, the original Vision people were trained on a futon.
Wow.
And not
What's
only that.
What's a futon?
You don't know what a futon is? Okay, there's not enough time in this video to help Karam in this subject, but it's like a rollout bed that college students use.
Okay.
And so you clearly lived at home when you were in college, didn't you? Yes.
I did,
Or else you'd know the art of the futon. But anyway, a futon is a pull-out bed.
Okay.
It's a couch, and then it could be a bed.
So they were all basically in there when you started Vision Commercial?
I trained them all in that room, and not only that, we'd have to coordinate our training sessions on when my kids would knock on the door. JJ was let's say I started Vision in 11, so that was about
was maybe 1?
12, 13. So JJ was getting to the age where he could walk and he could figure out those darn child-proof doorknobs that you're about to learn about because you have a baby coming. And so, and if I spilled those beans, I'm sorry. We'll have to cut it out. Anyway, so no, my 2-3-ish-year-old son would come in and open the doorknob in the middle of a meeting or a phone call, and it was not a conducive business environment for us. But yeah, started Vision on a shoestring budget. I think $8,000 of my expenses was signs,
which is expensive.
We know it's not abnormal.
Yeah, you bootstrapped it basically with what you can get. Now, before starting Vision, how many years were you in real estate with the companies prior? Was it 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, 6 years?
I think it was a little bit under 5. I was at Alliance for 2 years, and I think I was with Janus for about 2.
Okay,
so about 4.
The reason why I asked is just to give perspective of you were able to gain confidence and learn what you're doing and feel confident enough to go open a company, which is very hard to do, and go compete with big players.
Yes.
So it's impressive how you did that. So you bootstrapped it, $15K in credit card debt, $8,000 in signs, and how did it go from that to us being in fancy offices and successful places and so forth? Yeah.
God, but we'll get to that one on faith. But so we invested that money, and we were in the black 45 days later.
You were in the black, meaning
we were profitable. I was
45
profitable.
days.
Yeah, I paid that off easily in 45 days.
Wow.
And until COVID, so we went a stretch of right at 10 exact years of no debt as a company.
That is so
not a penny.
Impressive.
Like once, and the cool thing about it, once I paid that debt off, every dollar, I never had to put another dollar into Vision for 10 straight years.
So it was reinvested from?
It was reinvested from profit.
Money that was made, very nice.
And COVID, I mentioned COVID. I mean, COVID hit, and it hit us hard for a season, and we bounced out on fire as of last September, and we paid our debt off by, I think February of this year. We were in and out of debt for less than 5 months, but we paid off about $70,000 of debt.
But in COVID, companies got wiped out. We know that brokerages shut down, merged, etc. We also know that a lot of companies laid off employees, laid off.
We did the opposite.
Agents are 1099, but still, if you have to invest in them in certain things, you might just tell them buy. You said you guys did the opposite?
We did the exact opposite.
Wow.
Matter of fact, on the same, and I had to question my own sanity too, on the same week that Marcus and Millichap, who is a very a nationally known investment brokerage firm, they laid off half of there's a big article in, I think it was CoStar.
I believe I read it,
that they laid off half of their administrative personnel. In the same week, we doubled our administrative personnel. Nice. And I thought I was nuts. Well, I thought I was nuts, but I also knew that this was the right decision to do. I knew that COVID, there's things that we didn't forecast, obviously, that come out of it. But what I knew about COVID is that it was unique.
Nice.
No one, and there are plenty of people in the old timers in our industry that will tell you, I lived through that recession, and I lived through those in the RTC days. Karam, you're going to hear the RTC days from almost all of your owners. I bet you if you ask them about the RTC days, they're going to have a story.
Okay.
And then you got the 2009 recession, and those big events. But COVID is different than any of those.
Okay. Yeah.
It's so incredibly unique because the retailers don't have products to sell. They don't have consumers to buy. The office people don't have places to work, or they don't want to be at work.
They don't want to be,
right?
Yeah.
And then the industrial, they can't make things. It's just such an
the industrial was doing well, but there was no employees because they couldn't go to work, so they couldn't do the warehousing.
Well, industrial's on fire, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But at the end of the day, I knew COVID was so unique that instead of us kind of rowing away from the current, I knew that was the time for us to run into it. So we doubled our administrative personnel. I think we added 6 or 7 agents last year.
Nice.
So I'm doing all of our training videos we did on Zoom. Jacob Nunez, who's broken his $100,000 threshold, and he's killing it. Jacob, I did all my training with him. That's what converted everything to video. Where him and I would meet at 6:30 in the morning every day for 2 weeks. He'd watch the video, and we'd talk about it for 30 minutes. But it was such a unique season. But what I noticed real quick was my phone started ringing when everyone was off. when the agents were off, and not just Vision agents, but agents in general they were with their families and didn't know what to do. I received more phone calls from owners than I'd ever talked to, and I instantly knew that we had to be ahead of the curve. We had to come up with COVID clauses in leases because people were concerned about signing long-term leases. Our office buildings, we had to come up with safety protocols and signage to communicate that to a public that doesn't always read instructions very well unless you put big signs up. We had to be very proactive. But when these owners started calling me, Karam, I realized this was the greatest opportunity that we were probably ever going to see in our lifetime to get to owners. Because typically owners, if they're loyal to their broker, and people call, they won't call. They know why we're calling them. We want that listing, or we'd like to go after that listing. But at that season, and we're blessed because I think our presence is felt in the market. So when either a principal or even a senior member of our firm calls an owner, I'd say we'd go from 20% picking up to 95% picking up, and not only that, 95% once we called that they'd chase us down again.
During COVID.
During COVID, it was crazy. Because
so it was like free money just hanging.
It was free opportunity.
None
of these owners had an answer different than us. They wanted to hear what we were doing. I wanted to hear what they were doing. I've got a master's degree in COVID retail right now, or COVID office for that matter. It was insane how much, collaboration and competitive information was being thrown.
Nice.
And truth of the matter is, to me, it was absolutely insane how little other agents were working in those 3 months, March to June-ish.
You know why they were working little? I'm thinking they found an opportunity
free
to
vacation. They got an excuse. They got an excuse.
And you tripled down.
There is no excuse. I tripled down. But here's the thing: our role, our job, and I knew this very early in my career, Karam. On the client side, on the tenant side, our job is to solve people's problems, and even on the landlord side especially. And COVID was a problem, and it was our job to be creative and to solve it. So that job doesn't end if COVID's out there and I'm on vacation, and that's also the spirit of our company, right? You can go on your honeymoon, and I would take phone calls for you as your broker, or someone else in the company would show stuff for you. Because we have a work-life balance set up inside of our company, it's a part of the fabric of our being, you can take time off, and mental health is hugely important, family health is critical. You can take time off, and still, your client can still have, A+ service, quality of service, and know that they matter.
Nice.
So, anyway.
One thing that's interesting is you tripled down during COVID when when almost everybody in the world was scared and afraid. My experiences during COVID with landlords, with properties that I'm helping owners lease up and such, was they were looking for answers. And a lot of other brokers, when the owners would call them to hear something, they'd say, well, this is just something we have to work through, which is going to be time, let it slide. Versus our answer was, we got to do 1, 2, 3. We gave them an action plan. Other brokers were like, just give it time. And time wasn't the answer for that. So I think that when you said you tripled down with the administration, with hiring agents, with calling owners, being more aggressive, I believe the 95% conversion versus a 20% pre-COVID. Because that is actually what's happening.
And it's still there. It's not as prevalent. People have gotten back to their old tendencies, but it's still there, where owners want to collaborate and they want to have ideas and so on and so on. They're not as curious because now I think COVID is more, I hate to say it, it's a part of our daily routine now in a weird way.
So what's impressive about COVID and about you speaking about it, the opportunity for those watching this video is still there, just like you said. Owners want to transition, owners want to find that aggressive agent, owners don't want to hear an excuse of wait things out or it's a little bit slow because we're still recovering. They want to hear that person who's aggressive and hungry. Now, you've built Vision Commercial. You've done what you've done with it right now, being very successful, 300 plus listings, which is phenomenal. I am not kidding you. If you guys ever visit Dallas-Fort Worth, just the region here, drive around, you're going to see sign after sign after sign. They're 8x4 signs. They're massive, and it says Vision Commercial on there. And those are listings that the company itself represents those owners. Now, having all these signs out there, you have to hire real estate agents to be able to manage these and get these and be successful with them. How is your hiring, and would you say it's a stress? Would you say there's high turnover? How is your feedback towards that? Because I know as a broker, turnover is huge for many. How would you say it is for Vision?
First and foremost, hiring for us is very personal. We've never hired because we had to hire. We hired because we meet good people and they fit within who we are.
Nice.
At the end of the day, we don't stress about hiring. I don't think we ever have, other than probably a couple little, hey, we've got a hole in this market we really need to fill. We've had some turnover, but traditionally we are hiring. We really have two paths in our company. We've got an intern pre-admin path, which is someone who will come in, get licensed, and they will do, admin's a bad word because it sounds secretarial, if you will. It doesn't sound as robust as what they'll do. And then intern also sounds very just collegiate, if you will. We will hire people fresh out of college. We're looking for a specific skill set for people. Okay. We found that there's a good correlation between people who have had success in athletics, or that they've had success in something big.
Prior to you hiring them.
Correct. We want someone who has been kicked before and they got back up. We want someone that's lived through some level of hardship, because this is not an easy industry to kind of wade through. Yeah. But we found college athletics is good, people who have been active in leadership in some level, because you really are leading yourself at that. You're self-motivated, right? But our turnover has been minimal. I'd say.
How many agents do you guys have right now?
We have about 30 agents.
About 30 now. Let's assume that your criteria, because I know your criteria is very specific. It could be having the hardships. It could be you need to have a degree. It could be that you want a certain relationship or connection with them. There's brokers who don't care about that. They will hire, go out and make money. You fail, you succeed. We don't care. Just bring us some revenue.
It's cheap. It's cheap to hire.
Yeah.
It's cheap to hire because they're independent contractors. You don't have to pay them hourly. Really, the cost for a broker to hire an agent is the business card. I mean, literally, $129 order. And if I just gave away our discount with Vistaprint, I'm something's wrong. But anyway, or Alpha Graphics, I'm sorry. Really, $129 for a set of business cards and go forth and prosper. Yeah. We have a budding young agent in our company who was hired by a Dallas firm, and they literally did that. They gave him a little bit more than business cards. They gave him business cards and a map, and said, "Go forth and prosper. Go knock on doors." Yeah. We don't do that. And
would you say if you did that? I'm sorry to cut you off. Would you say if you did that, you can easily be 100+ agents if you just wanted to just grab?
Oh, we could. We could have 1,000 listings too, but it doesn't mean that would be.
That's what I'm trying to get across. That's what I'm trying to get across.
We're looking for a certain person. There's two. When I started Vision, or as we've grown Vision, there's two trains of thought. There's the hand on the business card, and if they have it in them, they'll figure it out. Yeah. Mantra. And then the big companies will do kind of they'll hire agents with no experience, and they will sit underneath a junior agent or even a senior agent for years before they really have access to a client. Their commission splits are very weak, and they're splitting. I mean, typically in our industry, it's 50% commission splits, right? Yeah. Which is much lower than residential.
For a strictly commercial firm.
Much lower than residential.
Because you can go to a residential firm who does commercial, and they can give you a high commission split, only to realize you have zero resources.
Right, like a LoopNet that costs us over $100,000 a year, or CoStar that costs us $60,000 a year. Yeah. A residential sign will cost, $89 or $90? I can get it. Our other signs are $600.
Easy,
two-sided.
Easy, yeah.
So I mean, the cost is way different. But the two trains of thought is give them business cards, go forth, prosper, or put them underneath someone for so long that they almost get stifled, if you will. And you see that turn in a lot of the bigger companies in our industry, where they don't keep many people very long because they burn them out. Our model is set up. We hire people we trust. I met one of my frenemies, or one of my number one competitors, you'd call him. Him and I were sitting down for lunch, and about a year and a half ago.
So you sit with your frenemies?
I will, in a heartbeat.
Nice.
I mean, it's our market, right? My job is to learn, because the more I learn from you and what you do, your cultural background, which is different than mine. I probably asked you, 150 questions about your background, and your faith for that matter, because we go to different places.
Yeah.
And so we're always learning in what we do, but I was sitting down with a guy who runs a company, a retail-based company a little bit larger than ours, of whom we will surpass by the end of next year, mark my words.
Nice.
But anyway, he asked me, he said, because we don't mandate that our agents are in the office a set period of time.
Correct.
Come and go, do what you do. And he asked me, how do you trust these people? They're doing what they say they do. I said, well, number one, if I didn't trust them, I wouldn't hire them.
Wow.
And that's profound, because
That's huge.
because they either make it or don't. I mean,
That's
it's simple. If they want to make it, that's fine. We're going to give them tremendous resources, and we absolutely have held on to people longer than anyone else would have, or longer should. And a lot of them have paid big dividends. We've got a gentleman who was cast away. We had 2 senior members that wanted to let him go last year, and towards the end of last year. But I liked his character, and I liked who he is as a person, and we held on to him even though he was going through some struggles. And he's still with us, and he's number 6 highest producing agent right now this year for us.
Awesome.
And so he's cranking. There's another kid that was suffering another guy who was suffering from depression and some addiction issues, and he worked through that 2.5 years ago, and he's a spectacular agent now.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, I mean, like I said, we're looking for a specific type of person that can be okay with getting their teeth kicked in on a daily basis, and they will show up at work the next day and understand that this is not a sprint. This is a long marathon.
I love that.
And they'll work through it.
I love that.
So
real estate, we're going to quote what Roger just said. Real estate is not a sprint, it's a marathon. I can't agree more than that, because I've done deals. The way I became a real estate agent was I helped a client who is now a client, but I helped him prior to becoming a client, helped him buy a piece of land, made 0 commission. He looked at me at the title company and he said, "This is great. We have you, Coram, who's the real estate agent. We have the title company, and I'm the guy with the money." And I'm thinking I'm not an agent.
You weren't a real estate agent?
I wasn't an agent. I helped him through translations and such. Yeah. And I wasn't an agent. I quickly left and I hammered in, and I got my license maybe within a month, even though it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I hammered it. And it's a marathon, because that same client who I did free work for, which I'm a huge believer in, doing free work, it comes back later, just like you said earlier.
Serve people. Exactly.
He is one of my biggest clients. His portfolio is probably worth 20, 30 million. Every single asset he buys, sells, or decides what decision he wants to make, he has to run it through me because he chooses to. Yep. I helped him with a small piece of land. I made 0 commission. I said, why not? If I'm going to learn, I'll learn it for free. He's given me a blessing to even let me help him with it.
Yeah, and what's the old saying? He who is trusted with little will be trusted with a lot.
I love that.
He will be trusted with little, will be trusted with the big things too.
He will be trusted with little, will also be trusted with big things. That's beautiful. So there's a lot of strength to that. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Many come in because, like you said, they're broke. They think they'll make a quick commission check selling their mom's house to make 10 grand, to realize after they sold their mom's house, there's no other houses or no other deals or no other shopping centers or whatever it may be.
Well, the barrier to entry to get in is inherently expensive. It's relatively, it's cost about, what, $2,000 to get a license?
Possibly, yeah.
$2,000 time. And if you don't have a degree, you have to take more classes than people who do have a degree. If you have a real estate degree, then even less classes. But I mean, it's expensive. It takes time. And I think also too in the college discussion that we had earlier, people that have a degree, I mean, I got young college kids that they'll take that test like that. Wow. But you get someone that's been out of school for 10, 15 years. Yeah. And that's a tough test to take. It is. Well, and the fact that it's all residential is another thing. And it's another thing we could probably do an entire channel on.
Is it really like that? I'd never thought of that.
It's terrible.
It is residential,
it is
99%.
Terrible. It is terrible. So what you have is these people spending $2,000 on a test if they want to become a commercial broker, commercial agent for that matter, and 99% of it's residential, and they get in the commercial world going, okay, I'm licensed. No, you're really not. That is the biggest downfall with Trek, is that you should have to do a commercial deal, you should have to have some kind of a designation or a commercial course.
Something related to it.
But here's the problem with that is the commercial world is so vast. It's so different than houses. All houses, every single house can be defined by the number of their bedrooms, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably 99% of homes are defined in 7 or below variables. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, right?
Yeah.
Versus commercial, this is an entertainment. This is a stadium that we're in.
Yeah.
Or then you go retail, you go multifamily, and then obviously office splits into medical, and you got high rise and garden style. They're also niched.
And every one of those is almost a specialty, if you
No,
will.
every one of them is absolutely a specialty.
Yeah.
I could tell you a broker in every one of those niches that are niches, however is correct to say it. I could tell you a broker that makes $1 million plus a year in each one of those specialties.
That's impressive.
It just is.
Yeah.
So
and just they're focused directly with that.
that's all they do.
Wow. So we spoke about Vision Commercial, how it was built, how you created it, how you started with it. What was it, a futon inside the 4th bedroom with
Of
those
our
that
bedroom's house.
That's awesome. How the success is, how you have agents and so forth. Now, you're in commercial real estate. That's strictly what you do. That's what you focus on. That's all your dedication to building Vision Commercial, plus to yourself, is that. Do you own any real estate? If that's really all that you do is commercial real estate, do you own some real estate?
We do own our house, and we have bought 3 properties in the last 3 years. They're all 300% leased.
Nice. So they're commercial properties.
They're commercial.
Nice.
They're office in nature. They're all high frontage. They're not pure retail. They're kind of service retail office.
Okay.
We own our headquarter building, which is 15,000 square feet in Grapevine.
Nice.
We bought a former abortion clinic in Fort Worth.
Okay.
It might not be the most politically positive topic, but we leased it out to a national credit construction company. So
But it was a former one.
it was former. It had been closed for a while. We gutted the daylights out of the building, took it down to the studs,
Wow.
and put a national construction company. So now, whatever happened there before, now there's somebody there that creates new.
Nice.
One of the groups that we met while we were target marketing the other building, the former abortion clinic, came to us and said, we don't need 5,000, we need 2,500. We had just bought another 2,500 square foot building.
Wow.
So we put them in there. And that's probably, that goes back to something earlier. We talked about serving people, right?
Yeah.
It's bigger than just that. They're in this industry, everything ties together. My first restaurant assignment was Pollo Regio. So I go out and I found 25 buildings that would work for them. This is when they had probably 8 locations in DFW. They probably have 40 now. And I went out and did all the search, all this work, driving everywhere. Even if I did a deal, I don't think my gas would have paid me minimum wage for what I did. But I had this list of like 25 or 30 properties for them, and then their franchise director came to me and said, hey, I fell in love with the brand so much I became a franchisee. I'm moving to Lubbock or El Paso, and have a good day. They're not going to franchise anymore. So I got burnt, but on the other hand too, not even 2 months later, I was working a deal with a landlord in Bedford where a Fuzzy's franchisee came to me.
Nice.
And that landlord decided he did not want Fuzzy's in a shopping center because it would create too much traffic.
Oh.
And I know that that's ironic, but whatever.
Wouldn't you want more traffic?
You would, except the neighboring tenants to this restaurant was a national dental company and then a national medical company. His concern was you clog up the parking lot, my pillow money, my national credit rent leaves.
My guarantees.
And so I had to call the tenant and say, I'm sorry, but the landlord's worried you're going to bring too much traffic to the center. His comment to me, and this guy, I think he went to Texas Tech, and he's a Texas guy, and he's one of my favorite people. And he was like, isn't that the point? I was like, yes, I'm sorry. But I liked him and I liked his character. I said, so can I help you find other stuff? He said, sure. And so we developed a relationship, and I used that search from Pollo Regio to propel me with Fuzzy's. We did Plano, then I doubled back on another franchisee and did 2 Grapevine locations with them, did an alliance with another, Roanoke with another. That one guy from Bedford, I've now done 8 or 9 deals. I've got a deal pending with him now.
Wow.
And one of my favorite people to work with, because I've worked with him so long, we have an agreement, we have an offer agreement that he's approved 8 times, and it's the same agreement. and we work through it. And it's very easy to get deals done when you know your client, you know what they're going to say when you're on the the pre-negotiation.
So
phase.
you got burnt doing it was, how do you say it, pollo regio?
Pollo Regio.
I say Reggio, even though it's not the right way.
That's
but I
okay.
love it, by the way. It's
I'll
very
forgive you.
good. If
It's
you guys haven't
fantastic
tried
food.
that, it's delicious. But you said you got burnt, but really in real estate, anytime you're driving streets, anytime you're doing research, anytime you're doing comparables to check how much this property sold, what's this lease per square foot.
Very true.
Anytime you do that, even if a deal doesn't close, you just gain a ton of knowledge.
Knowledge.
Right?
True.
So
it all comes back.
Exactly. So you did get burnt. You didn't get your gas money. You weren't getting paid your minimum wage. But at the end of the day, it led to almost 9, what was it, Fuzzy's deals, right?
With this one franchisee, I think I've done 8 or 9 with him.
That's impressive. And their deals, they don't take 500 square feet. They take good prime locations, and they do very well for themselves. They got very good tacos as well.
Yep.
So that's awesome. So you do own real estate. You also invest in commercial real estate. Would you ever invest in residential real estate? I guess single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes?
All right, so it's funny you mentioned that. My wife and I had a polite discussion, if you will. We bought a home in Hazlet in June,
Nice.
and the debate was we loved our home in Grapevine. It just needed a little bit more of a yard, and loved the home, loved the location. We were 5 parcels away from Parr Park, about as ideal of a family raising environment as you're going to find. And when I ran numbers on, we had put 20% down on that home, obviously, and I paid over our principal payment for 5 years on the home. So
Nice.
we owned most of the home, of its equity. And when I ran my numbers as to what I could get on rent relative to my equity, it was about a 2% yield. It's about a 2% gain.
Wow.
And so we don't really lift a finger on an investment unless we're getting 10% back on it.
Yeah.
And so as tough as it was to sell, a property where, I brought my daughter home in that house, I've got a friend of mine who he's taken in Florida and all over the country for that matter. He took a $40,000 multifamily loan about 20 years ago, and in about 7 or 8 years turned it into $64 million in shopping centers
You took $40,000
of a loan
and converted it to
to buy a
64 million.
multifamily complex, filled it up, gained equity, flipped it, 1031'd over,
Nice.
1031
I
over,
love that.
1031
I love
over.
that game, yeah.
And he, and I asked him one time, I said, why? He lives in a condo in Miami Beach, and he's got a young family, and I said, why do you live there? He goes, well, Roger, I make more money investing into commercial property. So instead of losing money on a house, I live somewhere for a year or two. Whenever my wife gets tired of the beach, I just move to a different beach she wants to go to. My wife's always happy, and I make more money on commercial. So that's kind of stuck with me. And so the answer to your question is, if somehow the dichotomy would change where your returns would be better in residential, this is about returns. Where can I maximize my returns?
Which makes sense. I mean, you running your numbers is something 100%. If you're doing any investment or wanting to invest, you have to do that. I think that because you had such high equity in there, maybe you had to do, let's say, a cash out refinance to lower that equity to make it give
But
you
if
more
you do
return.
that, that would have increased my down payment, or that would increase my monthly payment.
Yeah.
Then my yield, it would have been even different. So could I have made money on it? Yeah, we could have. At the end of the day, though, I know that I can take that money and I can multiply it and grow it faster. And there are people, and I need to say this too, when we invest, we don't invest for a year. We're not flippers.
Nice.
It's so common, I know you know this because this is what you've done so many times, but I don't flip properties.
Yeah. You hold them.
Property in Grapevine we bought it in 18, and I bet you we own that property for 15 or 20 years, and I call it my first kid's college fund.
You're kidding
And
me.
not at all. And so more than what I'm looking for is I'm looking for residual passive income. What can I put money in and get an income back? I have a certain annual income goal of passive income before I'll say, okay, I can stop now. And that's everything's driven on that. How can I increase my passive income so that I can be home with my family or be on vacation with my family or whatever?
You mentioned you don't lift a finger unless it's 10% plus in returns.
Correct.
Is that's minimum? It has to be 10% plus, and that's when you may entertain that deal?
So there's the conventional thought on investment for commercial. is cap rate. You hear cap rate all the time.
Yeah.
But cap rate's a misnomer if you're levering a property. If you're putting debt on it, it's really about your cash on cash.
Okay.
So the cap rate, if somebody tells me it's a 10 cap, if I leverage it 99% of the time, my cash on cash is going to be much better.
Yeah.
For instance, we bought Grapevine at a 6.5 cap, but I expected that property, once we filled it, to be at about a 14% cash on cash. But if I looked pure numbers, it was a 6.5 cap on the purchase, and it was probably about a 7.5, 8 cap or 8% on the cash on cash when I bought it. So you can look at upside. Like for instance, Grapevine, we bought it at a 6.5 cap. Before Vision even moved into it, because we had a couple of vacancies.
Yeah.
Before Vision even moved into it, it was performing at a 9.5 cap, and I had a 14% cash on cash on that property.
Was it a 6.5 cap when you bought it? Then you had vacancies you could fill?
I had 6.5 cap with meat on the bone with vacancies.
Nice.
So we took the 6.5, we filled it up at 86-ish% leased. We filled it up to 100%. It was performing at a 9.5 cap within about 60 days of us buying it.
Wow.
So I mean, we went from I told my investors that we went from 8% cash on cash to 14 cash on cash within 90 days.
Is it doing a 14 cash on cash today?
No, it's doing much better than that.
Give us a ballpark.
22% is what it did last year.
Nice.
So, well, and we've been blessed too. We got when I knew about the property was market average of that. That's where the value. You talked about knowledge, right?
Let them know that, yeah.
One of Vision's success, or my success, the company's success, has been driven on market knowledge, number one. And that market knowledge can be derived in a lot of sources. It can be because you've done 25 deals in a market.
Yeah.
But a lot of us, even, and you face this too, you'd probably never been to Duncanville before you started working with us, right?
Yeah.
And I put you on a property over there with a former grocery anchored and another Dollar General over there. And you have to do a market study and really you have to look at it from the eyes of the consumer and go, okay, if they're calling me, who else are they going to call? Find out what they're asking, and don't just, unfortunately, most brokers don't do a market study at all. And so they're supposed to be an expert in a market that they've never been in, lived in, been around, don't drive at nighttime, they don't shop, their wife doesn't shop. That's,
Very
to
powerful.
me, that's negligent, right?
Very powerful, yeah.
And so getting in and getting your hands dirty and being able to really get a great snapshot of here's what the value is of your property from a lease standpoint has been critical. So, and the next part that we've done with Vision has been we are always very structured with our strategy to fill up a property. I'm not going to an owner saying, hey, I can fill your property, ... I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but for example, we filled a property. I had a client that bought a shopping center over off of Heritage Trace and Old Denton Road. This was 10 years ago probably. He paid about $8 million for the center. Okay. He put $2 million into it, developing a pad. He had some ground on the center that he could build on. He turned and flipped it in about 18 months for about $20 million to a REIT. But what drove that value is what we did. He bought it at 70-some% leased, and there was a major brokerage firm that didn't do squat on the property. And we came in and we said, okay, our goal, you need an insurance company, you need a pool, you have plenty of kids, so you need an indoor pool company, you need a sandwich, we said you needed a pack ship, FedEx type model,
nice.
We need a burger guy, so on and so forth.
You guys came in with a plan.
Correct. We had a merchandising plan like what we're doing here for the stadium now. We were just talking about it. And
I was just going to ask you too, so you guys are representing the stadium, you guys, Vision's also, you said something about a REIT?
A REIT, yes.
That you say that you guys also represent. I know that you said there is, big names that you represent, Vision represents. What would you say the top three would be?
We're sitting in one of them with the Texas Rangers, and that's been a fascinating study because we are having to sell a product to retailers that is vacant. It no longer has a baseball state. It's no longer has a baseball team in it.
Nice.
And the Rangers have done a spectacular job. They've got rugby, they've got a minor league soccer, they've got high school football. They've done an incredible job about driving feet here. So Texas Rangers is one. We also were awarded or are working with Hillwood to do their first medical project. And why that's significant is Hillwood has, there's very few people in the Dallas-Fort Worth market that don't know who Hillwood is. and second, anything they touch turns to gold. And I mean, the Alliance, the
You wanna work
entire
with someone.
Alliance corridor they're the Grant Cardone of Alliance, right?
Nice.
I mean, it's on fire because we live out there because of the
Yeah.
stuff they've done
Yeah.
20 years ago. So they selected us to do their first medical-only park in the Alliance corridor, right next to one of the hospitals on 35. And we also work with some REITs. We work with Brixmor,
Nice.
who owns. They probably have about 30 grocery-anchored centers. And
Very nice.
DFW represent them in Fort Worth on one of their Tom Thumb assets near TCU.
That's a lot. I think we're gonna need a part 2, part 3, part 4 for this video because that's.
But it's fun, Crom.
It's
And let me explain why. So when I started Vision, getting into this industry, I was educated enough, right, to get a job with any of the big firms,
names,
right? And there's nothing against CBRE or JLL or Retail Connection or Venture, any of those guys. But I wanted to do it, like I said, I kind of identified that there was a different way of doing it. It's not about just padding my wallet and helping someone. It's about helping someone, and the rest comes and follows,
Nice.
as you were talking about before with the other client. And so I could have gone the traditional route, but driving to Dallas from Grapevine or Euless, wherever we lived at the time, driving to Dallas every day wasn't my thing. And dressing up in a suit, for that matter. I mean, I'm more shaved than in this moment than I will probably be on any of your other future YouTube videos. But
By the way, guys, if you're watching till this minute, you got to hit the like button in support for Roger because he went and he got a fresh haircut. He came in dressed up. He did all of this for you guys because typically he's more chill, more laid back, and that's no problem with it. But when
I
he
wanted
saw
to hide the gray hair.
Yeah.
Well, and I couldn't be I couldn't be outdressed by Karam because I knew you were going to dress up.
And when I first met him, he's like, Karam, you do know that you don't have to dress in a suit every single day. I was like, yeah, but that's just how I am. He's like, okay. And he was wearing like a baseball shirt and a baseball cap.
Yep.
That's hilarious.
Yep.
That's
So,
go
but yeah,
ahead.
as we grew, Karam, our first flyer, the template for our flyer, I made while I was watching an Ohio State Buckeyes football game. Our website was a free Yahoo small business, whatever. There was a site builder thing that I built Vision's website until we got up to probably 250 properties watching a football game on a Saturday.
Wow.
I mean, you talked about the $15,000 it took to start the company.
Yeah.
I didn't pay for a website developer. I didn't
Yeah.
pay for an attorney. I did my own LLC. I mean, there were a lot of things that we did, but I mean, early in my career, I'm going up. I sold a building 4 years into my career in Bedford, and I went head up against Marcus and Millichap and got the listing and sold the building.
Good job.
I believe we sold it higher than even what they said they were going to get for them as well.
Nice.
And so competing with the bigger companies, you don't necessarily have to have the sexiest literature, the nicest car, the nicest suit, or the biggest name company. At the end of the day, our industry rewards performance. And it's so when I'm able to come in with a plan for people and say this is what our merchandising plan is on a C-class center versus I'll put up a sign kind of deal. We come in like we did at that center in Heritage Trace. We identified I think it was eight specific uses, and we got 7 of them before he sold that center. He sold it at 98% leased, and about 2 months after he sold it, we did the lease representing the tenant to get him to 100%, to get the buyer to 100% on that center. And I think even today, I think that center is maximum 85% full. So after it's been sold. But anyway, so we will look at a center like we are the owner. And then we're also gonna, because of our experience with so much retail and so much office, we are then gonna go to the other side of the table, and we're gonna think about it from the mindset of the tenant.
Nice.
We're gonna look at what pricing they would look at, what other properties they would look at, and then which type of tenants are gonna come to this building, and we go out after them. And we find stuff like, I had a daycare list because I had such a good relationship with the lady at DFPS. I repped a daycare, and I talked to her so often, she finally sent me the list of every daycare in the state, email and all. Now that's publicly available now, but it wasn't 10 years ago.
Nice.
And so I had a way to target market, and we say target market a lot, but it really is the fabric. Market studies and target marketing is the fabric of what we do. And anyway, so
it's relationships that you've built. It's the hard work that you've put behind the scenes that many don't see. It's all of that, and still ringing in my head. I get excited with investments. So I'm thinking of the Grapevine property that he said he purchased at a 6.5 cap. How he took it to where it is today, about a 22% cash on cash return.
Right.
That's impressive. That's the game of real estate in whole, and your focus is commercial specifically. So that's what you do best at. And I tell people this all the time who are watching this video, watching my other videos. Find what you're good at and go head first specifically with that. Go narrow vision, focus on that, and do that. I know a lot of people who see that one person making a couple $100,000 from that one flip, or see that person buy that property and make it as a rental. So they're trying to do too many different things at one time when they're really good at just flipping properties. Why not just focus what's working for you? And many people aren't doing that. They try to see what's online and what other people are doing, and then they start to get out of what they're good at, and that's ultimately hurting them.
What's the next hot thing that they're going to chase?
What's the next hot
I mean, at the end of the day, how many people have gone broke because they quit on something too soon? Now, the reverse is also true. How many people have gone broke staying with the same, dog and pony?
If you don't know when to get out, that's
correct,
also a problem.
Correct. But at the end of the day, we're all built to do a certain thing, a specific thing, right? And but your focus needs not to be on this guy's making more than me, or this guy has this new hot thing. We were talking about crypto and Bitcoin and so on and so forth earlier. The importance is go find something you love to do and do it best. There are billionaire widget makers. The duck call guy is a multi-millionaire off of making a duck calling thing, apparatus. So find the stuff that you're really good at, pour into it, and really grind with it, and that always works out.
I love that. And something I'm gonna add on to what Roger said. Find what you love to do, but keep in mind it's okay if you're not in love with it, because when you're young, sometimes you really don't know what you love. But at least have a percentage that you enjoy what you're doing to where you can grow and do well in it, and eventually you'll find what you love. Too many people keep hunting, looking for what they love, never find it, and keep wasting time trying to look for it. Love it enough to be able to do it well, and then from there, doors will start to open for you. So Roger, we spoke about your business, your successes, your investments, but everybody who is at a successful point in their life, like you said, early in your marriage was a little bit tougher because you were focused on growing your business. The motivations and the failures is what I want to touch on. And I want to touch on these points just very quick. One from the failure aspect, one from the motivational aspect. For a failure aspect, what is one failure that you would say that you had that maybe was a slap in the face, maybe woke you up and made you realize you should have not done that? Something that took you a step back but let you wake up to take 10 steps forward. What would you say that would be?
Wow.
And this is for all those who are watching, to give them that motivation because maybe they've had that failure and it really kept them crippled.
Okay, I'm going to call it necessarily a turning point, not necessarily a failure.
That's a good way to look at it,
because it did create a big pivot. My first job out of graduate school, I worked for a medical sales company. Okay. Fantastic company. They were venture capitalist funded. So they moved very fast, right? So turning point, I had a moment, and you and I have talked about faith. I had a moment about 2.5 years into that company where I gave my life to Jesus Christ, and at that point, things evolved. Like I knew I didn't belong in that company. It wasn't a bad company, but I knew I wasn't there. I was miserable. And at the end of the day, that was the beginning of the turning point. And then about a year into that, 8-10 months into that, I got fired from that company. Wow. And I had added a lot of value, but I was difficult. I was ornery. I was prideful. And
they fired you for what reason?
More for just not doing my job. And I don't know if you've ever seen Office Space, but the TPS reports, these annoying reports. I had to send a. We worked for, it was a pathology company, so it was specimens. I had to send a specimen count report every Friday to my direct report, who then had to report it up. And I was helping an agent or a salesman do some report before I left the country. It was actually the same trip I met my wife on.
Wow.
And I forgot the report, and she had to do the extra work, and so when I came back, they fired me.
Wow.
And I'm not, this wasn't I was ornery. And it was a season of my life where I was very prideful, very ornery, felt that my worth was much higher than it clearly was to the organization. And so that broke me down. That was a huge shift. I mean, you want to talk about a failure, I got fired.
Yeah.
And you got a master's degree, and that's something that colleges do lie to you about is if you get this piece of paper, you're going to get a job. No, you actually have to go out and try.
Nice.
And so I failed there. That stripped me down to $7.58 in my bank account at that point in time.
Ooh.
Moved back in with my mom.
So you got fired.
I
You
got
$7
fired.
and some change. You moved back
It got
in with
me
your
to that
mom.
point. I had some savings. I had a car payment that luckily I was ahead on. As we talk about, I never have taken out too much debt.
But you were still down there.
Yeah, and I lived. I got broke, and we lived broke for probably about a year and a half, 2 years. Like, I didn't know if we'd pay rent. My wife and I budgeted, but we.
So just to retrace, you got fired. You went and lived with your mom. You still went on that vacation, which you then found your wife. But during that period, you were broke. Like, you didn't have much money.
To chronologically, so I had a good amount of savings. Went on this trip, got fired on the way back. That changed everything. And it was convenient that I got fired because my wife was in college at the time, so we could stay up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning talking. So it actually was good for our relationship that I got fired. It was not good for my pocketbook. It was definitely, anyway. So long and short though, Crom, is that I felt on that trip, I had a vision, and it's pun intended for that matter. I had a vision to get into commercial real estate on this trip, and I knew on this trip, even before I got fired, I knew that this job was expiring. I knew that I was meant to be somewhere else, and so I had a vision to get into commercial real estate. So I came back with that idea, real excited to investigate it, only to find out that I need to investigate it sooner than what I thought. The job went away. In that process, my wife and I get to know each other. I made a leap into commercial real estate, as I talked about with IDI, sending Glenn that hat. But I was broke as a joke, and some of the best advice I was given was from Jill, who was one of my first mentors in real estate, who now works for Vision, by the way.
Nice.
And she said, unless your last name is Weitzman or Miller, or you have a year's worth of income saved, year's worth of living expenses saved up, you need to go get yourself a part-time job to survive.
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart, and I had waited tables in college. So I went out and got a job waiting tables at a Don Pablo's, which then ended up going over to Uncle Julio's. But I waited tables with a master's degree. My assistant manager nor my manager even had a high school degree.
So that
talk about
humbled
humility.
you. That
Oh my
humbled
goodness, too. I mean, but I had fun. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was where I needed to be. That was just a fantastic season. We got married while I was still waiting tables and starting in real estate. My first deal in real estate is on my wife's hand. 100% of that check is on her hand right now. 100%. And that was its own funny story too, where there was a specific, I felt led to ask her to marry me, and I wanted a certain ring, and it was predicated on spending, having that income from that deal, and I felt like it wasn't the right one, the right rock, or the right ring, and so I went back. The client had called me and said, we're not going to do the deal, but I still wanted to investigate the ring, so whenever the deal was, I could ask her to marry me. And I went back later, and it was a higher priced ring, and they called me 45 minutes after I walked out of that store and said, our deal's dead, but our deal's not necessarily dead. We want to lease it, but we want to add 2 more years on it. And the price of the ring was within like $45 of what my commission check would be. It was like the weirdest. To me, it was a God thing that played out that way. So I mean, every bit of my growth was tied into how I was investing, if you will, into my family, for that matter.
That's huge. So
It's a lot to unravel.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. So you basically got fired. You then got married. It was a turning point because you had to get humble because you have a master's degree, but you were waiting tables.
I'm waiting tables at a restaurant.
And then you became an agent through that time frame, and it woke you up. That's impressive. Now on the flip side, so what time do you wake up every single day? What motivates you every day to do what it is that you're doing? And how do you keep that motivation going? And has it ever cut off for you?
I wake up, and I have woken up for probably the last 5 or 6 years at about 5 a.m. My day
Nice.
starts 5 a.m. I've got about an hour's worth of Bible time, and I usually start working. My schedule has changed a lot over the last 2 or 3 years because now I'm home a lot more with Trenton running the company, and I focus more on investments. As far as being driven, I mean, I've got a goal of where I want us to get set up to be as a family and from an income threshold, and I guess that drives me. But I mean, really what drives me is being home with my family. So that's
A lot of it is relating back to family.
everything goes back to the family. And so
for you specifically.
correct.
And you've seen successful people. Do you think that attributes to others in the industry of commercial real estate? Or do you think they get so hungry for growing their company bigger and bigger and bigger and making that bigger deal, bigger check
I
and so
know
forth?
I could tell you 10 people who are extraordinarily successful in our industry, and they're all divorced. And I can tell you even a large chunk of them who have half the net worth than they should after working for so long to build their net worth, because this is an accelerator game, right?
Yeah.
It was easy. Once I bought my first property, it was easy. We went from buying one property at all to buying 2 properties in a week. I mean, so once you can scale. So I know a lot of people who have given up an awful lot. A gentleman that I looked up to, he's in Dallas Real Estate Ministries, and I met with him early in my career, and he said, Roger, if I had one regret, I lost my family out of this deal. I worked too hard. He got paid, I think it was CBRE paid him $1 million cash bonus to come work for them when he was switching companies in his career. I mean, this is not somebody that had a minor success level. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like I said before, if I do everything that I do and I end up divorced, I mean,
What's the point?
Exactly, what's the point? So a lot of what drives me, I'm home. My schedule's unique. I mean, we homeschool our kids, so I'm home in the mornings. I kind of fit work. What used to be is I used to fit my family into my work, my work-life balance, right? It was a work-life balance.
Yeah.
Now I've got a life-work balance where my life happens. We're home with the kids. Like today was a doctor's appointment, and we did school, in my bedroom because my wife was in her office area, and before I met with you here.
Yeah.
So it's different.
So it's
now.
your life and family, that's priority, and then work is fitting in within that.
And they're as part of my business as anybody. JJ, my oldest son, since he has my name, he actually did the signature on buying one of our properties last year. Joshua did the signature on buying the other property.
Wow.
He read Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad for Kids, and he came home and he said, my wife and him were talking, Daddy, I want to get more assets. I was like, what's assets? And that's an older book, so I thought he was saying cassettes, but he was pronouncing it wrong. He goes, assets, and I had to listen to it. Assets. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, I'm buying one tomorrow. You want to come? And so he came and he got to sign on the dotted line. But we had an investor meeting last week, and my son said, oh, why do I got to go? This is no fun. And I said, you know why you got to go? And he said, why? And I said, because that's your college fund. And so, I mean, every bit of our buildings, we buy with upside. So I mean, I'm buying a building that will appreciate in value. We traditionally have put money into all of our properties. And so we're upping the equity that we have. But at the end of the day, right now, if something were to happen to me, all my kids' college is completely paid for, and my wife's got residual behind it. So
That is beautiful and that is powerful. I know that this is resonating through the camera for everybody who's watching this video. I know it has for me. We spoke about Roger's business. We spoke about his personal life. We spoke about your motivations, and we spoke about your failures. And, to me personally, when I sit with you, I get a vibe of being encouraged, motivated, and inspired. To me personally, and to everybody who's watching this video, sadly, always what we look at is the money.
right.
We want more money. We want to grow our portfolios. We want to invest more. We want to have the nicer car, the nicer house, the nicer vacation. We want to just have the nicer stuff, which requires money. It's so nice to sit down with someone who respects, who loves the family time, to be able to put money on the side, business on the side, because you prioritize that more. It humbles me listening to what you're saying. It makes me realize that, and you sharing that $1 million bonus of the guy who got it for CBRE, that's huge and that's real. And that guy, did you say he was divorced?
Yep, he lost his family out of the deal.
He lost his family because he decided to go the money route. I'm a firm believer in trying your absolute best to balance the two. And I respect what you've done because you've built a company that is successful and still having a successful family, which is beautiful and awesome. I wanted to personally thank you, Roger, for your time, for you being here. It's a blessing and an honor to be able to sit with you. Everybody who watched this, I know they got value from it. Everybody watching, I want you to know that this is not the last time you're going to be seeing him. We're going to be walking his properties. We're going to be getting more insight on what he does, how he does it, how he gets upside in his investments, and how you all can do the same. I wanted to thank you all for swinging by, and if you didn't already, hit the like button. We would both appreciate it. Tell him to hit the like button.
Please hit the like button.
See how nice he is? He even said, please hit the like button. And guys, subscribe. I upload every single week on YouTube, so I'd love for you guys to subscribe and watch all these videos that we post out there. And most importantly, thank you so much for watching this video. Me and Roger, we're both out.